Numero uno, the double rebar with the CheeZe. For this technique, what you want to do is equip the retool special ability as well as the rebar puncher for both the primary and the secondary for MUL-T. The rebar puncher is the strongest of MUL-T's projectiles, however it has a pretty long cooldown between shots. By using the special ability retool, which in my case I have mapped to my E key, you can switch between your two primaries and immediately fire again, and then switch back. By spamming your primary fire key as well as the special ability key for retool, you can launch those rebars way quicker and do a lot more damage. However, it gets even better when you combine this technique with either the Soldier's Syringe or the Mocha, which essentially reduce the cooldown of this technique to 0, allowing you to go absolutely nutty and start getting some rapid fire double rebar cheese with Mr. Roboto. Numero dos is the Magz and Fragz. For this technique to work, you need to have equipped MUL-T's alternate special ability, Power Mode. This ability allows MUL-T to hunker down, armor up, and dual wield his currently equipped primary and secondary weapons at the same time. However, the secret bonus to this ability is the fact that if you use your blast canisters, which is his secondary, which launches out these little grenades which will explode and stun enemies in a given radius, and that particular skill is on cooldown, if you exit out of power mode, then it will immediately end the cooldown and you can go right back into using those blast canisters. This isn't particularly useful on its own, mainly due to the fact that power mode has its own cooldown, so you can't just spam this. However, the real benefit shines once you pick up a couple of backup mags, which grants you an additional charge of the secondary ability, which is MUL-T's blast canister. So as shown in this example here, if you have 5 backup mags and then 6 charges of the blast canisters, you can send out all those blast canisters, and typically for each of those charges to come back, it would be its own separate cooldown, but by popping in and out of power mode, you can immediately get back all 6 charges right away. Utilizing this technique allows MUL-T to stand on business, stun lock enemies, and absolutely drop the hammer on some foes who are seeing stars and can't do a damn thing about it. Numero tres, we've got the Sir Slicer. Although other characters such as Loader, Rex, and Mercenary also have innate armor, which is essentially a defense stat built into their character, MUL-T is unique in the fact that 2 of his abilities actually grant him extra hyper armor when they're used. These being the power mode as well as his utility skill, which basically transforms him into everybody's favorite 2008 Disney robot WALL-E, zooming around the by and large spaceship looking for his robo soulmate. This additional armor bonus granted by these 2 abilities is particularly useful in 2 main scenarios. The first being mitigating fall damage, and the second being just absolutely tanking enemy shots and getting into the thick of it while dealing tons of damage of your own, either by dual wielding the weapons of your choice with power mode or going full Ramaroo with his utility. For tip numero cuatro, we have the Nailway to Heaven, everybody's favorite construction site Led Zeppelin hit. The Nailway to Heaven begins with equipping power mode as well as double nail guns. With his DeWalt inspired kit equipped, you want to go ahead and keep those peepers open for either the Soldier's Syringe or the Mocha, which will increase the attack speed and just ramp up the damage that you can do with the double nail guns while in power mode. Additionally, to turn this worksite incident build into a straight up OSHA violation, keep your eyes on the lookout for the crit glasses as well as the tri-tip dagger. Basically, if you can put together these 5 pieces, the dual nail guns, power mode, attack speed, crit chance, and bleed with the tri-tip dagger, then you are well on your way to sending pretty much any enemy straight to the Shadow Realm. One thing to keep in mind is the nail guns do not have that much range, so you do need to get up close and personal in order to get the most damage, but luckily, as mentioned before, MUL-T gains that hyper armor when in power mode, so it makes him a lot more durable and able to tank shots from enemies when in close range. The second thing to know is that MUL-T's nail gun attack actually comes in 2 parts. There's the initial firing, which occurs as long as you hold down the fire button, but there's also an additional burst attack that occurs at the end once you let go of the button and fires a little burst of nails, as well as propels you backwards slightly with some recoil. And that leads us to the ultimate plot twist of this entire tip, that what I told you before isn't even the true Nailway to Heaven build. The true, authentic Nailway to Heaven build is when you stack tons of attack speed. I'm talking 30 plus soldier syringes, and use that nail burst fire thing that I was talking about and fly yourself around the map like Tony Stark in his Mark I Iron Man suit that he built in a cave with a bunch of scraps, and literally take the Nailway to Heaven. Numero 5, the Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto. If you've watched any previous videos, you probably know I'm a big fan of the bands. They're pretty much busted on all characters, and MUL-T is no exception, with his rebar puncher being the most reliable and accurate way of proccing these super good items. However, you might find yourself thinking, what do I do if I do not have rebar equipped? How am I supposed to proc the bands? Well, have no fear. MUL-T can also proc the bands by straight up ramming into people. That's right, if you have any of his other weapons equipped and are struggling to activate the bands, you can just pop it into overdrive and hit him with the coming through now. Obviously, this is pretty difficult to do on flying enemies, but it is better than nothing when you aren't rocking rebar and don't have any shurikens to proc the bands. At least you can put them to use. Another thing to keep in mind is that when using this Ramaroo utility skill, he will pierce through small enemies and will only activate the bands when hitting a larger enemy, which stops him and ends the animation. Which is frankly pretty useful, as you can straight up Fast and Furious Tokyo drift through a crowd and not worry about wasting proccing a band on some weak enemy like a Lemurian or Beetle. And finally, a little bonus, some thoughts for bots out there. Basically, a checklist of items to keep your eyes out for that work particularly well on MUL-T. First up, we've got the crowbar white item, which works really well with that double rebar CheeZe build that we mentioned at the beginning, and works even better if you pair it up with bands, since the crowbar's ability is to deal additional damage to any enemy with greater than 90% health. Next up is the brilliant behemoth red item, which synergizes particularly well with the double nail gun build, since it causes all attacks to explode and deal additional damage. This, combined with the high fire rate of the nail guns, is particularly good. The same can be said for the plasma shrimp, which fires an additional shrimp missile projectile for every shot that lands, while you have the bonus shield up, which the plasma shrimp grants. Once again, a perfect pairing with the double nail gun. Next up, we have the tri-tip dagger, which gives you a chance to apply a bleed stack on every hit, and this works well with both double rebar and double nail gun, but the double nail gun just works better because you're getting more shots out and thus more chances to stack that bleed. Since Mr. Roboto is severely lacking in the mobility department with his abilities, keep your eyes out for the Hopu Feather and Wax Quail green items, as well as the Paul's Goat Hoof and Soda Can to add some much needed mobility to his kit. The crit glasses, as mentioned before, are really good as they just boost your critical hit chance and that doubles your damage. And likewise, the ocular HUD equipment, which grants you 8 seconds of guaranteed critical hit, is particularly useful as well. And although the crit glasses are generally better on multi, if you're planning on doing a looped run, do not be afraid to pick up the Lost Seer's lenses, especially if you have a Gorag's Opus for the equipment, because this combo with the double nail gun just deletes enemies off the screen. And of course, last but certainly not least, is the humble Soldier Syringe or Mocha Joka, which, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, unlock MUL-T's full potential, the double rebar cheese. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Let me know any of your Mr. Roboto tips down below. Thanks for tuning on in, and we'll catch you next time. Adios, amigos.
Coming through now, coming through, shake it like it's heat, OVERDRIVE.